Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are joining us from in this wide world. And thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Jason Vanderbrake. I'm Elite's Director of Online Communications, and I am really happy to be here with you today. The title of today's webinar seminar is Why Minerva Schools is the New Harvard and How to Get In. We put it as straightforward as we could in that title. So now, if you're joining us today, you might already be very familiar with Minerva, the Minerva Project, Minerva Schools at KGI, and the Minerva Baccalaureate High School program, or you might just be curious and wanting to learn more about this exciting new innovation in education. So either way, I know you will leave today having gained lots of wonderful information about if you're a student or your child's future with regards to education. By way of a little bit of introduction, some background info, Minerva has been called the future of education. It's been compared favorably to top tier schools like Harvard and Stanford in terms of both quality of education and also in terms of how competitive it is. Minerva's acceptance rate is right around 1%. Actually, I think even a little bit less right now. And it's been the topic of stories in the Wall Street Journal, in the Guardian, and recently, a while ago, in a column by Frank Bruni in the New York Times. So with us today, joining us today is Jess Zier. Jess is an admissions representative with Minerva. Jess, thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to hear all about Minerva and your experience there. So I will go ahead and turn the webinar over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for the introduction. And hi, everyone. Welcome. Really glad that you could join us today. Just to give you a little bit more context, I'm currently an admissions representative at Minerva, but I was also a student at Minerva and I graduated in the class of 2020. And so I'm very excited to share with you today everything about the admissions process, the application, details about the program, but I'm also very happy to answer questions about the student experience. So if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the chat and I'll be sure to leave some time for Q&A at the end. And I'm going to share my screen. But like I said, please put any questions in the chat, though some of those questions might be answered in the presentation. Here's just the agenda, just so you know what to expect. I'll tell you a bit about Minerva's mission, the academic approach and pedagogy, so the way that Minerva approaches academics and the way that they teach. I'll also talk about the global rotation and intercultural immersion, which is very unique to the program. And then I'll talk about the application process, what you need in order to apply, as well as financial aid. And I'll end off by talking a little bit about the Minerva Baccalaureate, which is Minerva's new high school program that Elite is offering. And I'll also I'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So please leave any questions, but listen out, some of these topics might be covered. So Minerva's goal really, Minerva prepares top students from around the world to become effective leaders and innovators. Minerva's mission is to nurture critical wisdom for the sake of the world. And so you can tell by these themes that Minerva's really focused on the future of education, cultivating leaders and innovators and ensuring that students who go through a Minerva education, whether at university or the high school level, are really prepared to tackle big problems in the world and to be very impactful in the things that they go on to do. Minerva has identified, and many other researchers have identified, a global skills gap where a lot of universities and chief academic officers believe that their institutions they're effective at preparing students for the world of work. But then when you ask employers, when students graduate and they go into the workplace, only around 11% of employers agree that universities are actually teaching graduates the skills that they need to succeed in the workplace. And so there's a gap in terms of skills between what universities are trying to achieve versus what employers are actually seeing once students go out into the real world. They're not taking tests anymore. They really have to be practical and apply their knowledge, and there seems to be a gap there. So that raises the question, what skills should students gain? What exactly should they be focusing on at the university level? And Minerva's approach to this is very unique. Minerva approaches this through these core competencies that focus on both personal and interpersonal abilities. So I'll explain this to you. Personal abilities, these are things that you as an individual should be able to do. Things like critical thinking, where you're making a decision, you're evaluating a claim. It also involves creative thinking, the way that you come up with new ideas and concepts, the way that you problem solve, how you approach critical and creative thinking. But it also definitely entails interpersonal abilities, the way that you both communicate and interact with others. This can be through written means, through spoken, nonverbal, various different multimodal communications, as well as the way that you interact, the way that you work in a team, the way that you negotiate. And all these skills can be practiced and taught through different topics and lenses. And so throughout the entire first year curriculum, every single student, regardless of your major, you learn how to use these skills through various different courses. And then in your second year, you go on to choose your major, but you all have these fundamental skills that you learn and you cultivate over time. And the cognitive skills and frameworks that Minerva has developed, which are really fundamental to the program, are habits of mind and foundational concepts. Habits of mind are these mental abilities that the more you practice them, the more that you're very intentional about practicing them, the more they become automatic. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm telling you about Minerva, I'm informing you about different aspects of the program. In order to do that, I have to know the audience, what information is relevant to you and how do I communicate it? Whereas if I'm telling my mom about the program, she probably wants to know something a little bit different, or, just knowing your audience. So habits of mind are things that become automatic over time. And then foundational concepts, these are pieces of fundamental knowledge that can be applied broadly across different contexts. So an example of this is a cost-benefit analysis. You could use this in an economics class if you want to know the cost benefits of some sort of decision. It can also be used in an evolutionary biology course where you're trying to understand different cost benefits in situations in terms of evolution. So you learn these skills and then you apply them across your different courses in a way that becomes so automatic and really fundamental to the work. Now that I've spoken a little bit about how Minerva approaches those skills, the question is, how should students learn these skills? How does Minerva do that? And I'll talk about these three pillars, which are very unique. So the first is structured courses. All of the courses at Minerva are designed to teach both breadth across different disciplines, as well as enable students to dive very deep into specific fields. So like I said, you choose your major, but you still take electives in different majors and different colleges, and you really find that they're very intentionally interwoven. What you're learning in one course comes up again in a different course, and there's also scaffolding nature of the curriculum. So like I said, everything you learn in first year comes up again in your second year. You learn it again and you apply it again in your third year across different subjects. So the content is different, but the skills are very intentional. Something else that is very unique based on different educational experiences that I've had at least, and definitely in the world of academia, Minerva focuses so much on active class engagement and active learning. And this is all based on scientific evidence. There's decades and decades of research on neuroscience and the way that the brain works and adapts to new information, and most importantly, how the brain learns. And Minerva uses the science of learning for every single aspect of the course design, the lesson plans, how the courses are taught, and also most importantly, how students are receiving this information. What this leads to is an improved understanding and retention of concepts. You're not just learning something for a test, writing the test, and then forgetting everything that you just wrote. You are coming to class and you're engaging in debates, in discussions, in presentations. You're challenging your own assumptions and beliefs, and at the same time, you're learning more about what your classmates, how they interpret the information. And this leads to retention of concepts, and it's really just such a unique way of learning. Something else that the active learning enables is the ability to transfer learning to a diverse and novel situations. What this means is you might be learning a concept in your history class and you're able to apply it in something completely different. Maybe you learned something in history, you can apply it in your data science course. It's the ability to transfer your knowledge to something where you've never seen it before. And this is what we see in the real world. In the real world, when you're approached with a problem, you don't just have a textbook that you can open and find the solution to. You have to take your prior knowledge and figure out a way to apply that to a real world situation. And Minerva's coursework really allows you to do that. The last component I'll touch on for how to learn is through class technology. So all courses at Minerva are taught via Forum. Forum is the name of Minerva's proprietary software, which, as I said, was very intentionally built and designed around the science of learning and how students should learn. And it enables a very dynamic discussion-based class with so much interaction where your performance is tracked not just over time, but also between courses. And this allows your professors and instructors to give you frequent and formative feedback. You receive feedback and you have ample opportunities to iterate and revise the things that you've learned, the way that you're interpreting them, the way that you're applying them. And it's really just very dynamic and a data mediated environment, and lots of data to kind of give you guidance in that regard. This is really going beyond the classroom. So you're learning all these incredible skills in the class, and you're trying to, really cultivate those skills and apply them to real world situations. What better way to do that than to be exposed to different societies, different cultures, different systems around the world? So Minerva's 4-year undergraduate program, each semester is in a different country around the world. The first semester is in San Francisco. This is where Minerva's main office building is. All students start there in your cohort. And then for your second semester, you're in Taipei in Taiwan, then Seoul in South Korea, Hyderabad in India, Berlin in Germany, Buenos Aires in Argentina, and then London in England. And then your final semester, you go back to San Francisco, full circle where it all began, for your thesis defense and graduation. This really gives you so many opportunities to apply what you're learning to real world situations, of course, but also to see it from multiple different perspectives. And in addition to being able to experience all these different cultures and different places, your classmates are also from all over the world. Around 80% of the Minerva student body comes from outside the US. I was one of those students. I'm originally from Johannesburg, South Africa, and my class of 150 students, we were from 42 different countries. So every time you have a conversation with someone, you're learning about their background, the things that they were brought up with, what they believe about things. And you're, of course, learning so much from your professors and from the coursework, but you're in a class with students from all over the world, and you're learning about that topic or that content from all those perspectives. Makes it really powerful and allows you to just apply this in any situation you find yourself in. And you're not just, going to one of these cities, staying for 4 months and then leaving, but there's a very big focus on making sure that you make the most of that time and immerse in the most meaningful ways. And so there is a student experience team who focuses on different partnerships and making sure the students have the experience to immerse in those cultures, both professionally and in other ways that they see fit. So I'll talk a little bit about professional experiences, as well as co-curriculars and civic partners, which is what we call them. What you see on the screen right now are examples of some of the professional experiences that Minerva students either had when they were students during the summer or after graduation as full-time employment. During the summer, you have lots of opportunities for internships, but during the semester, you also have opportunities for what we call civic projects. This is when the team that's in each of these cities, they have different partners who really believe in Minerva's mission and are so excited to work with Minerva's students who invites students to work with them on projects throughout the semester, where they can apply their coursework to different projects that are happening. One that sticks out to me that I was involved in is during my semester in Buenos Aires, I did a civic project with the National Ministry of Education. For 4 months, we looked at different data, we conducted interviews, and we worked with the Ministry of Education to think about adolescent integration in education. And at the end of the 4 months, when the semester came to an end, we presented it at the office of the Ministry of Education. And I heard that they actually ended up implementing some of our suggestions from that proposal into their official policy making. So even as a non-Spanish speaker, I wasn't able to speak the language and integrate in that way, but I was able to involve myself in a very meaningful project, meet people from the community, understand the place that I was in, and then apply everything that I had learned from my social science courses to actual policy making in my third year as a student. So these are just some examples, but there's ample opportunities for students to explore what they're passionate about. You're not expected to come in knowing exactly what you want to do. You can try things in different fields. You can try things in different functions and really, really understand where you want to grow professionally and personally. So these are just some of the ones that I wanted to highlight. There was also data that came in that 100% of managers said that Minerva student interns performed at or above the level expected of undergraduates. And so they were very pleased, and a lot of students received full-time offers to come and work after graduation. So now I've told you about the academics, where students learn, how they learn. You're probably thinking, well, this is, very unique. So who actually belongs at Minerva, and who's the right fit student for a program like this? And there really isn't one answer for that. I could tell you about so many different types of students at Minerva. They have so many different interests and backgrounds and different attributes. But what they do have in common is that they are very intellectually curious. They're deeply driven, and they're inspired by the complex challenge of making the world a better place. When they hear about complex challenges, they want to make an impact. They want to figure out how to solve those problems. They're very passionate, and they're really just excited about this learning opportunity. I'm going to talk about the application process now, because it's very unique and different from other institutions, and there's a very intentional meaning for why that is. But Minerva focuses a lot on selecting top students from around the world based on academic excellence, how they think and solve problems, as well as their accomplishments. So definitely taking a very holistic approach to understanding who a student is, what they've done, and what potential they have to achieve more. There's 3 parts to the admissions process. Part 1 is basic information. So that's just information about who you are and your academic background. Part 2, this is where it gets very interesting and different. Part 2 is a series of challenges. Now, these challenges are not something that you can study for. For some of them, there really isn't even a right or wrong answer. But the purpose of these challenges is to understand your critical thinking, your creative thinking, the way that you interact, and the way that you communicate. And those 4 pillars might sound familiar. That's because they are. They're from one of the first slides when I told you about the core competencies and what you learn in your first year. So the challenges are a way to understand how you think and how you solve problems. If you're given something that's very unique, how do you comprehend that information? How do you approach problem solving? What are the steps that you take in order to problem solve? That doesn't mean coming up with a solution. It's also about the process. So there really isn't a way to study for it, but they're very fun, very, very engaging, and it's a way for us to understand how you think. And then part 3 is what you've achieved. So these are your accomplishments. This can definitely take the form of awards and certificates, Olympiads, different initiatives and activities that you've been part of while you're in high school. But it's also a chance for Minerva to get to know who you are, what's important to you, what motivates you, about your determination, your motivation. So we also look for things that are perhaps non-traditional, things that show us about your character. An example of this is we had a student who told us about a boat, a little raft that they created out of recycled materials, and they raced it across a lake. And it just shows us a lot about their character. We also had someone who told us about, they set a challenge for themselves to read 3 books every single week for a year. And at the end of the year, they achieved their goal of reading 3 books every week. And they told us about their accomplishment. So, what we look for in this section is what have you done? What is the impact that that has had either on yourself, your family, your community, society as a whole? There's lots of different ways to make impact. And why is it important to you? We want to see, that this demonstrates passion and motivation and willingness to really push yourself in different ways. So it's a very holistic application process. We're just trying to understand who you are, what motivates you, and how you would fit into the larger cohorts. And so I'll touch on this point over here. It says there are no quotas, no enrollment cap, and no standardized test required. What this means is that Minerva is not looking to fill X amount of seats, or we're looking to accept X amount of people. We look at every single application for who you are, what you've achieved, and what your potential is. And we don't look at standardized tests. It was like this before COVID. It will continue to be like this. Very intentional, because standardized testing is not a true reflection of your capabilities. And so we do that through our challenges instead. Having said that there are no quotas and no enrollment cap, I also just want to point out current data from the class of 2024 admissions data. We received 25,000 applications from around the world, from 180 different countries. So you can see that we're really committed to making sure that anyone who is interested is able to get a fair chance of applying, that's not a barrier. But out of the 25,000 applications, around less than 1% was admitted. 203 students were admitted into the class of 2024. So Minerva is very highly selective. We want to make sure that the right students are the students that are gaining access to this cohort, but it's not to exclude anyone, and it's not to fill a certain amount of seats. It's really looking at you as an individual. So take that into the applications process if you decide to apply. Focus on who you are and do not compare yourself to anyone else, because we're looking at who you are and not comparing you to anyone else. So really keep that in mind. Another part of admissions, of course, is financial aid. So financial aid at Minerva is needs-based. What you see in this table here is a breakdown of tuition and fees, as well as other expenses. This category over here, estimated living costs, this is an amount that is not paid directly to Minerva. These are costs for transport, food, different types of living expenses, but it's still estimated as part of the costs that you would need. Minerva offers all qualified students who apply and who qualify receive financial aid, and this is through 3 different forms. The first is low interest loans that are capped at a certain amount, so you're not expected to take more than a certain amount of loans each year if you fall into this category. There's also term time employment, which is truly very exciting. At Minerva, we call it work study opportunities. This is a chance for you to get some sort of income, make sure that you can look after yourself and you have the financial means to do so, but it's also a professional opportunity. And Minerva takes a lot of time. There's an entire team dedicated to making sure that term time employment is helpful and meaningful for students. During my 3rd year, I worked remotely for a nonprofit based in Kenya, where we were creating a complex systems manual on wicked problem solving for vulnerable schoolgirls in a specific county. And it was really, really just so incredible. I was interested in education, especially in the nonprofit world. And Minerva made an effort to make sure that I got an opportunity to work with a nonprofit like that. And now it's something that I have on my resume as a professional opportunity, professional experience. I got paid for it. I got to work with incredible people, and I got to focus on my academics, which of course is so important as a student, really the most important thing, while knowing that I had some sort of guaranteed income. So really overall, just a very great system. And then there's also scholarship grants, and this is just a certain amount of money if you qualify that you would not be expected to pay back afterwards for your finances at Minerva. And happy to answer more questions on any of these things. But also just want to make sure that I have time to talk a little bit about the Minerva Baccalaureate, which we call MBAC. And this is a program that aims to reinvent college prep. It's a high school program that Elite will be offering to 9th and 10th graders. So if you have more questions, please reach out to them. But I wanted to just expand a little bit because I am so excited about this program. I wish that I had had the opportunity to experience a Minerva High School. Having experienced the university, the high school is just very, very exciting. So the MBAC is a new model for college prep programming that is based on contemporary high school education. High school education has remained largely the same for the last 50 or 60 years. And now we're really seeing the need for a change in this, the future of education, the same way that Minerva University was kind of challenging the way that education has been done and focusing on skills of the future. The MBAC does that too, but at the high school level. So it's 4 years of intensive learning for ambitious students, and the program design, instruction, and the way that students are evaluated is evidence-based, meaning it's based on data, it's based on what we know about the science of learning, it's based on what we know about formative feedback, and really keeping student outcomes at the forefront of what the program is. I'll also just explain a little bit about these 3 points here. Of course, this is not all encompassing, but just some highlights and really interesting points of the program. In addition to engaging synchronous learning, where you go to class and you discuss, you debate, you learn from your peers and your instructor, there's also self-paced coursework, which allows you to do your readings, explore the different coursework in your own time, and then you come to your class and you discuss, you engage, you debate, you learn more about it and go very deeply into it. Another component is interdisciplinary skills, where you have very specific practical skills and knowledge that span disciplines. So the MBAC is implemented in your math, science, social science, and English courses. And you'll see that there's all these different connections. What you're learning in your math course comes up again in your English course, just as I described it for the undergraduate program. You get the opportunity to do that in high school, which is a really fundamental way of thinking about learning. And also very importantly is outcome-focused assessment, where you have ongoing evaluation of the way that you're performing and progressing on multiple different dimensions, both breadth and depth of learning. So going across courses and going deep into learning with formative feedback across all your different courses, and you have ample time to implement and iterate on that feedback. And before I get to Q&A, because I would love to hear from all of you, I just wanted to end on this quote that we received from one of our MBAC partners, which I just thought was really powerful. So I'll read it to you. Parents are sharing that their students, in a very short time, are being transformed by the engagement with like-minded peers, the personal attention from teachers, and an awareness that their content learning is not in a silo, but across disciplines and in their real lives. So everything that I explained before about real-world application and just seeing the world in such a different interdisciplinary way, parents are sharing that students are seeing this even just after a few months of being in the program. So many opportunities and incredible outcomes from the program. And like I said, Elite is enrolling 9th and 10th graders into the MBAC. And if you have further questions on it, please feel free to reach out to them. And I'm going to stop my talking for a moment here, just to make sure that we get to your questions. But you can see my contact information over here, and I'm sure that it will be sent out to you. So please feel free to reach out if you have questions about Minerva Schools. And I'm
All
going to
right.
stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Jess, for that truly wonderful information. That was, I mean, there's just so much to say when it comes to both the Minerva Schools at KGI undergraduate program, and then also the Minerva Baccalaureate high school program. In a half an hour, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. But yes, this is all incredibly intriguing, engaging stuff. So thank you so much. Um, we do have a couple questions that I'd love to get your thoughts on. One question that came in from a parent is pertaining to the undergraduate program, Minerva Schools at KGI. During the school year, are students working on in-country, real-world projects? And then, sort of akin to that, what is the purpose of the international locations or living situations?
Yeah, there's lots of different answers to this, but it really is intentionally built around your cohort. So you start with the same students in San Francisco, you move together to Seoul, to Hyderabad. So there's a very big sense of community. And you're really cultivating that community with the students that you're moving with, who, like I said, are from different places. And then in those countries, you get to work on real world projects. This takes very different shapes and forms depending on students' interests, depending on the courses that they're taking, depending on their scheduling, so many different factors. It looks different for different students. But the purpose of the country locations and moving around is to get you out of a campus bubble. There is no campus in the traditional sense at Minerva. If you need a grocery store, if you want to eat dinner, there's no dining hall. You need to figure out where to shop, how to prepare your food, how to plan your meals for the week. If you need a library, you use the city as a campus. When we were living in London, we lived in a very central district in central London. I just used to walk to the British Library every single day and be among some of the
Wow.
rarest and oldest books in the world. And those resources are accessible. So Minerva really encourages you, and the program structure allows you to use your city as a campus. This means that you're out there networking, you're meeting people, you're making an impact in the community, you're volunteering, you're exploring, you're gaining independence, and at the same time, you're applying what you're learning academically to all those different capacities.
Yeah, that's great. I would think from a professional perspective, or in terms of preparing students for uh, life in the future and their careers. I mean, this is hands-on, real experience in the real world, and your a Minerva student is going to have that much more real life, quote unquote, experience, going into kind of the workforce afterwards. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
definitely. I've
awesome.
seen this play out in my own professional capacity or just personal capacity. You'll see an interview question. Someone will ask, what's something challenging you've been through, or tell us about a time when. And after my 4 years at Minerva, I have an example, a story, a situation, a learning lesson from pretty much every single way that you can think of. And it really brings that experience to life in a very unique way.
Yes, yes. Well, and you saying that brings to mind something I was thinking during your presentation, which is as as an employer, if I'm looking through, resumes and things like that, and I'm seeing, oh my gosh, regardless of whether I even know what Minerva is, though it's increasingly less and less likely that I don't know what Minerva is. But if I see this student lived in seven different cities in seven different countries, that's going to catch my eye, and you're going to interview quite well with all of those stories and anecdotes and experiences. Not to mention become a true global citizen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
so. Um, well, and similarly too, let me expand this a little bit to the Minerva Baccalaureate. If I'm a college admissions counselor and or admissions officer, I guess I'm making admissions decisions, and I'm looking through applications, and I see that a student, attended the uh, Minerva Baccalaureate program for high school. That's definitely going to catch my eye too, and just the sort of interactive nature of everything is. I think, going to uniquely prepare high school students for admissions, perhaps at Minerva Schools at KGI or at any other wonderful school all over the world. So
Yeah.
speaking of that interactive experience, you and I were talking a little bit before we started the webinar about that sort of the forum online learning environment and the interactive nature of education at Minerva as opposed to the more traditional lecture based learning environment at most other schools, quite honestly. Was that something that for you just took some getting used to as a student at Minerva? And also, I mean, how do you feel that help has helped you kind of prepare for professional life?
Yeah, great question. I went to a very traditional high school in South Africa. I went to school every day. I went to lectures. I wrote my exams. I got top marks, graduated top 1% of my class. And I can't really remember much of what I wrote in those exams. I
Oh,
remember studying for them and I remember doing well in them. But if you ask me about the exact specifics, I probably can't tell you most of it. And then I got to Minerva and suddenly there was this online environment, a flipped classroom model that I was not used to. A flipped classroom means that you do some of your preparatory work at home and then you come to work to discuss it, rather you come to class to discuss it rather than being in a lecture and doing homework after the fact.
mm,
You're learning and then you're coming to class to discuss it, and that
mhm.
really challenged me in so many ways. But I found myself learning so much more. I was asking myself questions that I had never even thought of before. I was interacting with my classmates and hearing perspectives that I didn't even know existed or wouldn't have known to seek out. And by the end of it, I can now remember exactly what I learned in my first semester, in my first week, in my first year. Um,
Wow.
and that came up in my senior thesis where I mentioned the learning outcomes. So one of the learning outcomes that I wanted to apply to my senior thesis at the end of my fourth year, I went back to my first semester and looked at my grades and feedback and comments and ended up applying that learning outcome 4 years later. And so
Hmm.
it was a very different experience compared to thinking back to high school and what I retained and didn't retain from that experience. So it felt
Yeah.
much more real.
Wow. So I never even thought of that. I mean, I'm familiar, but just having learned about Minerva's learning environment and philosophy and everything over the last few months, but how much that can actually work to as a sort of mnemonic uh, system to actually help you retain that knowledge and learning. That's really interesting. Another question we had come in from a parent is how does the Minerva Baccalaureate, and again for those of you who are just getting familiar with these terms, the Minerva Baccalaureate is the high school program that Elite is enrolling students in grades 9 and 10 starting this fall. So how does the Minerva Baccalaureate add value? And then along with that, is it an internet-based delivery system? Yes. And a third question that goes with is why Minerva versus another online type school like Stanford Online?
Yeah, so I can try to answer this in with the knowledge that I have, but if you have more questions about the MBAC program specifically, please reach out to Elite and they can give you more information about
Absolutely.
implementation at your school. But from what I've seen and what I know, and this is why I've wanted to continue being involved with Minerva's education even after graduation, Minerva learned an incredible amount from the university program and saw students from who had done all different types of programs in different countries around the world come to Minerva for university, some of the brightest students in the world. And from that, they really learned a lot about college prep and what you need in order to succeed and be prepared for a program as rigorous as Minerva. And then they thought, well, if this is what students need for a program like Minerva, how can we prepare them in a very, very meaningful, intentional, interdisciplinary way and cultivate these same skills at a high school level? And so it was built entirely new from scratch, based on the science of learning, based on the future of education, and based on what they know employers and colleges will not only just want to see on your application, but what skills you will need in order to succeed as an individual, and
Yes.
created a program based on that.
Amazing, beautifully explained. Yes. So it's not, and it's not just the prestige of attending a school like Minerva, or doing a Minerva Baccalaureate high school program. It's the actual skills that you are going to learn.
Absolutely.
It's going to transform you as a person. In fact, as I understand it, having talked to uh, uh, Ben, the Nelson, the creator of founder of Minerva, that was kind of the idea, to sort of get away from this prestige based educational system and really go for the kind of meat, to really impart the hands-on skills that students are going to need to succeed both in college and beyond. Um, so for students, so if I'm watching this as a student or a parent, I'm I'm interested in the Minerva Schools at KGI University program, for sure. Is what for students who are attending, students who are interested in attending the university program, Minerva Schools at KGI. How would you say doing the MBAC, the Minerva Baccalaureate, would help prepare students for to succeed in the undergraduate program and for admission into that program?
In terms of preparation, absolutely. I can't even, I keep thinking if I had done this as a student, would I have even more robust skills now? I don't know, but I definitely would have been more prepared than I was in my first year. So definitely such an instrumental program to prepare you to apply to Minerva Schools. The application process is still very objective and very fair, but the admissions team knows to expect that students who have done the MBAC program are obviously very passionate and dedicated, and they have these skills that they've developed over time. And so the admissions team will certainly be looking at elements like that, while still keeping everything objective, fair, anonymous. We don't even look at any demographic data when looking at applications. And so it's who you are, what you've achieved, how you think, what skills you're going to bring, and your potential.
Amazing. All right, you heard it, parents. If you've got a student in uh, ninth or 10th grade, or in seventh or eighth grade, coming up into high school, and you're interested in the Minerva program for undergraduate, get them started. That MBAC is available to you. Okay, I think we have time for probably just like one or two more questions before we have to wrap things up here. But I have to take it back to the 7 countries, or 7 cities in 7 countries, because that's just I think that's certainly what I think of. The first thing I think of when I think of Minerva, that to me is just an impossibly exciting concept. And you did this, Jess. You you experienced this. So it would probably seem a little gauche for me to ask, like, hey, what was your favorite? But so I'll ask, can you share just, I'm sure there were many, but a notable or exciting experience that you had while you were having your Minerva experience?
Yeah, I get asked the question, what was your favorite? Very
Sure.
often. And it's really, really difficult to answer that question. But so many moments that stood out to me, trying to think of a specific one. Um, any theme that you're interested in?
I mean, really, it could be anything, whether it's simply, culturally, because that's certainly part of the whole experience too, just engaging in the cultures of these 7 different countries, or whether, maybe it's purely academically, and you just happen to be in, uh, you know, London when you when you
Yeah.
had this experience. So yeah, no particular theme. I don't know. And if you don't have anything, that's totally
Oh,
fine
I
too. But
have many, many, many stories that I might compile into a book one day. But when you said academic, something came to mind very automatically. So I'll share that.
sure.
In my third year, I was taking a class called Designing Constitutions. It's a 4-month course on designing constitutions. And we looked at various different types of constitutions from around the world, using the US as, kind of a model for that. But I was in Berlin at the time, and one of our final assignments was to think about, okay, it's 25 years in the future, the civil war in Syria is over. How do you even think about approaching creating a constitution post-civil war? And everyone in the class, there were 15 of us, we were put into the legislative, judicial, and executive branch for this project, and we had to do research on what each of those branches actually mean. You had someone like me from South Africa. I was born the year after apartheid ended, and so I was born into the born-free generation. The Constitution was rewritten. I experienced a very big shift in what the Constitution meant in my culture. We also had someone from the UK, where there is no written constitution in the traditional sense. We also had a student from Jordan. So very, very different perspectives, bringing in Sharia law and different types of perspectives. And we were in Berlin at the time, living, you could literally see where the Berlin Wall was from outside the apartment. There's little bricks that mark it along the road. And all of these different considerations coming together, thinking about building a constitution, acknowledging the history of Berlin and of Germany and of just the various different things that have happened in Europe over time. And I found myself sitting at my laptop trying to write this assignment. And I was like, I'm thinking of this from 100 different countries' perspectives. How do we make something uniform? And so this brought up a lot of conversations in class, and it was a very, very interesting conversation just about how to be a global citizen and how to approach these very complex global problems that don't have a solution, that might not have a solution. How do you go about approaching them anyway? That was kind of one of my very big Minerva moments where the
Yes.
global citizenship piece made so much sense.
Yeah, amazing. Yes. The world is changing, and it would seem that this program is uniquely preparing students to be true citizens of the world, global students. So that, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Yeah. A couple more questions we got just coming in. Would a child be able to do, I can answer this too, but would a child be able to do the Minerva Baccalaureate high school program while simultaneously doing the high school curriculum in their own school district? And that's the answer, I believe, is no. The Minerva Baccalaureate is a full-time high school program. That's correct?
Yes, and it's very rigorous. It definitely requires a lot of a student. So yes.
Yes. And finally, just for by way of clarification, this question came in. Uh, is the Minerva Baccalaureate program that is meant for high school students virtual or in person?
It is virtual. It's conducted through Forum, Minerva's proprietary software that I mentioned earlier. And then it's within the ecosystem of the school. So depending on what other things the school offers, those might be available to students,
Yes.
but the MBAC program itself is done through Forum.
Right. And I will say, from the elite perspective, since this is a program, the Minerva Baccalaureate, that we are offering um, as a part of our elite campus program, and that's available at any of our 50 plus locations worldwide. So this will be the coursework. The Minerva Baccalaureate coursework will be online, and then there will also be in-person support from elite tutors and counselors along with that. So it's kind of a best of both worlds situation. You have the Minerva Baccalaureate online education from teachers everywhere, and then you also have in-person support at your actual elite learning resource center. All right, I've gone a little bit over time. We were hoping to finish at about 6:45, so let's wrap up a little bit. If you are interested, ladies and gentlemen, in Minerva Schools at KGI, Minerva's undergraduate program, you can visit minerva.kgi.edu to learn more about the school and how to apply. If you're ready for a new and transformative accelerated program for advanced high school students, Minerva's partnering, or Elite is partnering with Minerva to offer the Minerva Baccalaureate High School program through our brand new program, Elite Campus. that is available at our Elite Prep Learning Resource Centers all over the world, including our 26 branches in the USA. Just to briefly explain Elite Campus is a revolutionary program that's combining the fully accredited top-tier education of Elite Open School with the unsurpassed tutoring and test prep and extracurricular opportunities that have made Elite Prep a leader in college prep and readiness for the last 35 years. So in a nutshell, what we did is we took everything that makes Elite Prep great and we created a comprehensive educational experience. And one of the academic tracks that students can participate in as a part of this Elite Campus program is the Minerva Baccalaureate presented by Minerva, so at Elite Open School. So we are now enrolling rising 10th, 9th, and 10th graders into the Elite Campus and Minerva Baccalaureate programs for the 2021 2022 academic year. There's lots more to learn about that. So to find out more about that and set up a free consultation with an Elite Campus admissions counselor, just go to elitecampus.org/Minerva. Okay, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Jess Zier, for joining us, for presenting this wonderful information. Very much appreciate it. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Stay safe, everyone, and we will see you next time.